topic. So we all came across an article that sort of rubbed us the wrong way today, in a weird way. And this is not a complaint about the person featured in this article. I want to be very clear on that. But it made us all scratch our head and and ask a couple questions. So there is a news agency that out of PEI that decided to feature the New Brunswick Commissioner of Racism, Um, Manju Varma. And so the article was about, they were interviewing Manju on racism in hockey in PEI and what should be done about it. And to be honest, Manju herself said a lot of intelligent things in this article, but also a couple of things that made us scratch our head. And I'll get to some of those details of what she said afterwards. But again, it really just made us question, like, what's going on here in New Brunswick? And who wants to go first? Fidel, do you want to give your Hillary?
You know,
I know you want to go first.
But Fidel,
why
do you
don't
want to
you
go
first?
first?
So that Hillary can really tear this
No.
apart.
I want Hillary first.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the exact line that I was like, excuse me. So first of all, I'll point out that this is the hockey story that I brought up, or I think early December about a young,
an old story, like a good month ago. Yes.
Yeah. So
they're rehashing.
Yeah. So this student or this younger Black kid who's faced racism now for a second time within this PEI league, and how clearly like not enough is being done. I'm trying to find exactly where she says, wait. Oh, if I was the government of PEI, I would reach out to New Brunswick. That is the line I have the most beef with now, Manju. Girl, let me be straight up. You know you lying. Like, you know that you're lying. Because let's remember that the job was posted in May for a job that was supposed to be finished in March, and they only hired her in September, and then they had to extend the deadline. You cannot say to another province, use us as an example, when we could not even prioritize hiring the woman saying this quote. When the premier did not enshrine Truth and Reconciliation Day, has asked to get rid of Indigenous tax exemptions, like, it's one of the most racist white men out there, that you're going to say, come look at New Brunswick. We are a shining example of a lack of racism in the Maritimes. Motherfucking excuse me, do you have a mirror? Would you like some Windex? Take a look, because you are completely incorrect. And I speak on behalf of every person on this podcast who's like, I've been in New Brunswick and I have had a racist experience. You are extremely wrong. You are not even done your job, which many other organizations in New Brunswick have already done for you, that prove that New Brunswick is so racist. Incorrect. Wrong. Dog, you were wrong. I would have picked Nova Scotia as a shining example. At least they have enough Black sense of community, in my opinion, that if you're going to look at a Maritimer province and say, hey, PEI, this is where you need to start, not New Brunswick. You have had this job for a hot minute and started a podcast. Congratulations. Where is a report? Where is findings? Where is proof of anything that validates what you're saying? There is no evidence. Give me the report and then we can talk. Homegirl. Done. Thank you.
I mean, the Windex part, that's fuck that. That's crazy.
Shots fired.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a bit of a far reach. I mean, you have not completed this job. And once you submit this, we don't even know if the New Brunswick government is going to make any changes. And not only that, the New Brunswick government has not even considered the fact of doing systemic racism when we clearly know there's systemic racism. And it is a little bit of a reach to say that, just because of the fact that the job has not been completed and their effects have not been even due. So I think personally, a racism commissioner is just a waste of money anywhere. Why? Because if you need somebody to tell you that there's racism, that means you're not listening to your people, or you just don't care. And there has clearly been acts of racism, not only in the police force, but in places like private sectors, public sector, in Atlantic Canada. I would not say Nova Scotia is the best example. I would say Nova Scotia has the longest history. And therefore, because they had the longest history and they had the most experience, because they actually have a Black community, they are a bit more advanced, but they have their own problems themselves. Again, I think it has been already said that if you want to change, all you have to do is promote laws and listen to the community that votes for you. And that's about it. It again, I'm pretty sure there's more to it. Of course there's, but there's more to everything. But for you to say that PEI should look at New Brunswick because they hired somebody late that haven't showed the results, that the results haven't been gone to the government and the government has done nothing about it. And again, we could do hopeful thinking that the government may do something about it, but they haven't. It's just a little bit far stretched when there are clear things that PEI can do right now without needing all those process to get this. Like, for example, racial slurs. If you say racial slurs to racial people, that should be a crime. You should get a fine. You should get some type of penalty. That is not rocket scientist. That is something that people can do as a law to protect systemic racism. But again, that doesn't, we don't need a racist commissioner to say that. We need politicians to promote that law and do that. And again, PA is way more advanced because they even have a Black person in politics. We don't even have that. They actually have a Black man as an MLA. We haven't had any people of color as an MLA here. So it's just a little bit of a far-fetched thing to say. Again, I think she brings the best intentions, but I think the problem is that we need to make sure that this work is done and that there's actual results and that the government will do actual action to do this, but not tell other provinces that may have a better shot at, at solving this than us. So again, I was completely shocked that people said that. Clinton?
Yeah, it caught us all really off guard. Before I get into it, I will say she had an opportunity to say a couple like really good points. Just pointing out the fact that the player himself who criticized the league should not have been suspended. That was ridiculous. And also the fact that, racism is never a mistake. She was saying that racism is not a mistake. In 2021, 2022, a mistake is something you do by accident. There's no way that anyone in that hockey league was not aware that they were doing racisms, that they were making racial slurs. I said that on purpose, that they were making racial slurs. Now, all that being said, I just want to echo the sentiment that, yeah, New Brunswick never has been and likely will never be a pillar of excellence for an example of how a province should act in terms of dealing with racism, especially when we're talking about PEI, who, in my personal opinion, is probably the least racist province in all of the Maritimes. The most accepting, probably because of their tourism industry, but the most accepting of cultures from all over the world. Now, New Brunswick's history is horrible with their treatment of Indigenous people, with their treatment of the Black arrivees who came in the late 1700s, with the repeated denials of calls for inquiries into systemic racism, with the countless amounts of research that has already been done that this commissioner is supposed to be copulating and analyzing on racism in New Brunswick. We know that there's a huge amount of racism. And already, like Hillary said, the role was filled how many months late? Just give me just six months late. 5 or 6 months late. So
to count from
I'm
May to
definitely
March.
not seeing a lot of feedback from the commissioner so far. I don't know how much feedback she's supposed to be giving. I can tell you that it was really weird to see PEI interviewing Manju because I thought there was only one article, but through my scrolling of articles, I haven't found, other than the September 24th announcement of her being appointed, I haven't seen any articles on Manju at all. But my team informed me that there were a few. There were the calls that for the Indigenous people should have an inquiry into systemic racism that is all their own.
Well,
yeah,
it was more
I'll keep going.
so It was more so Manju saying that she wanted to sit down with Indigenous leaders because she understood she would not understand that scope for her reporting and felt it was a really important piece to look at because of how New Brunswick has treated the Indigenous, and they are sort of refusing to speak with her because of the fact it would be like working with plain eggs, and so they're not interested in contributing in that way. And I can't tell if it was that article or another one that then mentioned the podcast that she is doing about
Yep.
racism, which I still want to know, was she hired as the commissioner
do-
against systemic racism to host a podcast, or has she chosen to do this on her own?
Is it like a side gig, or is this part of
Yeah.
her
Is it
payment plan,
is
taxpayer
it
money?
part of like encouraging faith in the community that she is so passionate about this that she has taken this up as a hobby, or is it just more public facing sort of propaganda by the government that this position was worthwhile? That is my question. I will let you
I
continue,
think
but I have a point after too.
absolutely. No, I think to be honest, we should all listen to the podcast and see what it's about. To be honest, it's on my list.
I listened
Because
to it.
okay, well, I'd love to get your feedback in a bit, and I'd also think we should talk about that because, ironically, while we are on a podcast, I don't think with the powers enshrined with the New Brunswick Commissioner on Racism, that may not be the best use of their time. So the job role was filled 6 months late, and according to the GNB website that I'm on right now, already it seems like they're behind in their mandate anyways. So the first 50 days were supposed to be the understanding phase, where they were supposed to meet with different groups, create a team, determine their objectives, develop terms of reference for obtaining their objective, communicate their intentions to identify and contact stakeholders. I'm not sure who the stakeholders should be. I'm not sure how many people she's talked to. I'm not saying we are the go-to, but I know no one's reached out to any of us. And so that was only supposed to be the first 50 days. It's now been over 100 days. So we should be in the second phase right now, September 24th. Yeah, it's been about 100 days. We should be in the action phase, implementing the research methodologies required, developing the tools and engaging with stakeholders to begin to discuss some of the results of the understanding phase. There's two other phases. If you want to check them out, you can go to the GNB website, but I would say that we are definitely already about 50 days behind schedule. And my other big qualm with this is it's just that so PEI is already talking to the New Brunswick Commissioner on Racism, almost as much as New Brunswick media has covered this topic. I haven't seen her in the news, and I think that is a hot topic. The last thing I'll say, I know everyone's just dying to speak, is but if she is doing her job, I hear about a lot of racist incidents taking place in this province, and I know that myself and some other people I know have worked really hard to try to engage multiple different media sources in these stories, and they're not being picked up. So to anyone who is listening, if you do have part of Manju's job is to investigate concerns of racism in the province. So if you have had horrible racist things happen to you, I'd highly recommend reaching out to her office, because I don't feel it's getting covered, and I feel as a possible outlet, maybe she's the one that should be contacted.
I will say, PEI has not reached to her. She recommended PEI that they should reach out. That's what she recommended.
The media. It's an article from a Prince Edward Island news source talking about the New Brunswick Commissioner.
Yeah, and I think the reason, one of the reasons,
and I don't think the government in PEI needs to reach out to her. I agree with you.
She said that, but I think the reason the article is probably just a news article. They're looking for news. That's a news in PEI. They saw something related and they look for a piece of news. I think that's as far as to it. Now, what I will say is, again, the job that's supposed to happen, and I will go with the podcast later, which, Hillary, I think you have very valid questions. The job that's supposed to happen is that there's supposed to be a survey or some type of investigation that is supposed to say looks on racism in New Brunswick. After that happens, whether it happens a year or 2-3 years from now, these things are going to be sent to the New Brunswick government, to the legislation. And after that, they're going to see, with the findings that these people got, what should they do about it. This doesn't mean anything until it gets to the right people and they do action about it. This is pretty much taxpayer money going to something to see if they act on it. And there could be many reasons why they would act on it, and there could be many reasons why we don't. We don't know that yet because this job has not been done. What I would say is that I think everybody should be aware where your tax money is going for or coming from, where is it going to, and what is happening with it. And I think it's too early for anybody for us to say what's going to happen. Again, I think we have to wait for the results. But again, I still it's still far fetched to somebody to recommend something that there's no impact yet, or even if there's going to be any impact. As far as the podcast, I have listened to it. Um, there is something that I could do, but I will say that behind the scenes because I don't think it's my my thing to say publicly. But the podcast is something that, you know, if you want to learn more about racism stories about people, yeah, of course, that's cool. That's definitely cool to have. Do I think it's something that we need? Maybe, but not necessarily for somebody that is already having a government position funded. I don't know if this is funded by the government. That's a good, very good question. If it's a hobby, more power to you. But if it's government funded, then I don't know. That I don't think that's a great place to put resources on. But who knows? We have to ask that.
Guess it's better than not putting anything towards it, but still, I'm skeptical.
I mean, there's
Go
better
ahead,
way.
Howard.
There's better ways to put.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
way
It's
better ways.
it's always better than nothing
Yeah, there's way better
whatsoever.
ways to put taxpayer
But
money for a podcast. But again, who knows? We don't know if this is government funded.
we'll have to wait 2 or 3 years to figure out if they're ever going to do anything right.
Yeah.
Hillary, I know you're burning with desire to say
Well,
more. Go ahead.
No, it's just you said something that I was actually going to bring up, but we said we're going to say opposite things because I noticed in the article that she points out specifically a commissioner in a province could have different roles. For example, for me, I'm right now collecting information. That is my role. The roles of other commissioners, they take complaints and then they investigate those complaints. So a commissioner on systemic racism could sort of do the role that I'm doing, or they could do a role where they are actually sort of the clearinghouse or the go-to for complaints, and then they investigate. So she doesn't want your complaints because I'll be the first one complaining. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, go look in your backyard at Blaine Higgs. I have 17 complaints. So she's not even taking complaints. She is just hosting a podcast. I don't know what she's doing.
No, there's.
Thank you. I misread that. Thank
But
you.
no,
Thank you for clarifying.
There's been clearly the clearly is that they are supposed to conduct an investigation or a survey, which is called, they call them scientific investigations. That's what researchers do in universities. That's what people in universities get money for, to do a research. And over the years of this research, things like computers come out, right? Or, you know, like the internet comes out, which is all of this is university research that they get to play with. What they're doing is that they're basically doing that. They're paying somebody to do a research on racism, and based on that research, they will come up with something saying to the government, "This is what it is." But that's been pretty clear since the get-go.
Yes, I understand that, but it's interesting that she is offering to this news source in PEI that the government of PEI should get a commissioner against systemic racism like her, but allow them to field complaints. She is not fielding complaints, which leads me to my question for you, Fidel, as the one who's listened to this podcast that she's hosting. Stories about racism from who? Like, are people submitting the stories, or is it historical stories? Because I'm curious.
No, there's
So the first
people,
episode, it's go ahead.
yeah, there's people from Moncton. There's a guy. There's people that you know. So one of them owned a cafe, and there's people from the province saying their stories about racism.
Okay.
Pretty much what we have done. But
Is there?
so
On Spotify,
it's on Spotify. But
on
again,
Spotify here, it says her first episode is her talking with her own employees, like her team members, the junior the executive assistant, and someone else that works for her, a senior policy advisor to the commissioner. And then the
Maybe
second
later.
one is someone, I think there's about one a month here. And the second one is she's interviewing Therese Trofimenkoff, who
Mhm.
is in the education sector and also has a website dealing with
Oh,
anti-racism and equity.
I think the first one is with Kalala. I think I know who he has a
Hmm.
cafe in Moncton.
Junior
Yeah,
Kalala,
Junior.
yep.
Yeah, that's the first. I think it's the first episode that they did. But again, I think not going because I don't want to put like not going to the podcast itself, because again I think more podcasts that talk about the experience of racism, I think it's great. I think
Yeah,
it's great. I think it's a great thing to do, and I think that's something that it's commendable. However, I will go to Hillary. Is this done with public money? That is the question. And if it is, then I will definitely call out on something that I know that I won't say in this, which I definitely, that was the first thing I saw. And I'm like, huh, okay, I saw this, but I didn't say anything because I'm thinking, well, it is what it is. I don't know how this is being done. So cool. But if it's done with public money, then that's a different story.
I can't wait till after the episode to get the tea. I gotta hear what you're talking about, Fidel. I wanna. When we turn off the record button, I got some questions for you.
Sure.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
on this, I'm confused now, Hillary, because on this same website, it states the mandate of the commissioner on the Government New Brunswick website: carry out a public consultation to gather views, and then conduct a comprehensive review. But it does have a section here saying how you can participate. It's inviting people to send written submissions from individuals or stakeholders, which I imagine are people that have a stake in the outcome of this review. You could send it by email, you could send it anonymously because of the sensitivity involved in sharing personal stories about racism. So did she speak incorrectly in her news article? Because it seems like the website says that she is supposed to be collecting stories from people.
But
What are,
I,
what are your thoughts?
I would argue that like the language she's using in the article is like investigating complaints. That doesn't mean she's not welcoming stories as data, but she might not be the one to further investigate, call people,
Mm,
ask what the situation is. Maybe she just wants everyone to not to be rude, but collect the data for me, bring it to my door, and I'm going to use these as examples in my article or as
mm,
potential guests for this podcast, public funded or not. But I'm not going to be the one going to these corporations and asking, what was the situation? What did you do wrong? Do you have a diversity and inclusion team, etc.? I'm guessing, especially
okay.
if they're already 50 days behind. Are you going to waste time doing that? But I would, I guess my opinion is just that it's one thing to conduct like scientific research and a survey. I would find it much more interesting to actually be speaking to people and getting information that's bigger than just a survey. Like anyone can, we've put out surveys and had white people answer them and they were not even the proper demographic, and it is more of a waste of time. I think complaints could be more fruitful. So I find it weird saying to, hey, PEI, you know what you should do, have someone field your racism complaints, but I am just going to use this as data for the report that I was hired late on, and et cetera, et cetera.
I
Again,
think,
Yeah.
go ahead, Fidel.
a racism commissioner is just a waste of goddamn
That's
money.
exactly what I was gonna say.
It's
I
just a
think
Yeah,
we
waste of
we
all
know
God.
that.
I think
Waste
we're
of
all
God.
like very like slightly pathetically optimistic, but like we said from the beginning, this is a big PR stunt. Like nothing again.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know Manju at all. She seems very intelligent and she seems very accomplished from I've read her bio. But it seems like this is just a big PR stunt from the government and they already have all the information. Like we know there's racism. It's just a big like, hey, we care thing after decades of getting the criticism that they don't care. I think it is I think it's a waste of money in a lot of ways because they don't need to collect this data. It's
and
and they
again,
could do it in like a week in 2021. It's not that hard.
no, and again, I don't think it will last a week because what they're doing is it's a research of scientific background, which
Supposed to
again,
last a year.
yeah, that takes time.
I know.
I'm not saying that will take time. However, I think yes, Manju is it's a very accomplished person, and I think she's the right person for the job. That's out of the question. However, do we really need it? Not at all. We don't really need that position. What we need is to invest in impoverished communities, which minorities are, talk to these people, which they're there again. And if you're putting somebody that has not a governmental power to do anything, because that's the problem. Like, even if you have a racism commissioner and he writes the complaint, can he do anything about it? No. That's the problem. Have no political power, no power to do whatsoever. Oh, I submitted 20,000 complaints. Yeah, cool. What are you going to do about it? Again, it will be, in fact, it will be even better. I would say, and this is something that could be in maybe Moncton that has the RCMP. It will be a better thing of money if the RCMP has a racism commissioner that they can actually act on laws and act on fundamentals of things that people do wrong. It will be a better success of somebody in the RCMP being more people of color handling these issues than somebody in the government. But again, that's a different type of ball game because not everybody has the RCMP. But even in that sense, that's even a better go waste, of resources than putting somebody to do research to know something that we already know that has been talked to, and you just don't want to listen to it, right? So it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that would be nice because correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that in New Brunswick, no one has ever been convicted of a hate crime
Nope, nobody.
ever in the history of New
Nobody
Brunswick. You
ever.
can file a hate charge. You
But
can.
we won't get convicted, and you can't convict that because
Yeah.
there's not a law for hate crimes. There's
Yeah.
there's not a
Race-
law for it. That's the problem. The problem is that there's not a law for hate crime. Who the hell are you gonna convict if that doesn't exist?
Yeah, you can't be. There's no racism is not illegal. So how could you be charged for a hate crime against a person of color?
And
Damn it,
again,
Manju, I've got a complaint and you won't field it, and it's this.
no, again, I think what she's doing is it's great work. I just don't think it's needed, and I also don't think the public funding could be going to better places than it. That's just it again. But the person is right for the job. The job is a nice try, but it's a very hard miss. That's why.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's better ways to do this. But we're gonna wrap this up. I do have two recommendations if you guys have, but I do have two. I will say shout out to the African brothers out there that like soccer or football. The African Cup of Nations just started. I see all my African brothers rooting for their team in their country: Cameroon, Senegal, Gabon. So if you guys are into sports, the African Cup of Nations just started, which will determine the African champion. And yeah, it's a big deal in Africa. So shout out to the people that are into that. And the second thing, I just finished reading two books actually. One is called The Prince of Darkness, which is about the first African millionaire in New York City called Jeremiah Hamilton, it's kind of a crazy story about New York in the 1800s. And the other one's called Black Titan. So if you guys want to read it, feel free. They're definitely very good books to read.
I have one. I have one. I went to go get it. This is actually like a teaser for a future episode. So our first Black History Month episode will be featuring editor Gregory Frankson for the Africanthology. And there's many East Coasters featured in it, but one of our good friends, Tondue McCarthy, is in here. So super exciting. We are going to be giving copies away. So look for that on our Instagram. And then the other thing I'll mention, it's not a recommendation, but this week Sidney Poitier passed away, and I would be remiss if we did not mention rest in peace to him. What a legendary human being. Very sad. That's what I've got.
I will say this, you guys don't know it yet, but rest in peace, Bob Saget.
I saw and I didn't know what to say
Yeah.
because he's white, but that's
It's
so
all right.
sad.
Bob
No, he's okay. He's okay.
He's all right. He was
kinda
all right.
black.
But also Betty White, like it's been a rough, like that within
Yeah, Betty White
2
too.
weeks.
Yeah,
Rest
Betty
in
White.
peace, Betty White. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob Saget too. He's a dude. He's a. That's too bad.
So,
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It doesn't look good.
People.
well,
People pass
2021,
away.
2022, 2020 are coming out swinging. So
2022.
let's see. All right, guys. So do we have anything else to say?
What about me? A
Yeah.
recommendation.
What do you got to say?
What do you got to say?
Bros, guys. Okay. The new Nas album is out. and it's fire. It's called Magic. I was gonna say if you're like an old school hip hop head, you got to check this out. So Nas, rapper from Queens, from like since 1996 was his first album. He's still killing it. His newest album is sick, and I was like, it's not just like my daughter loves the album. Like she's a young one and she loves the album. So if you listen to rap music, if you want to see sort of where some of the pillars that rap music was built on, check out the new Nas album. It's called Magic. It's amazing.
Yeah, Nas is one of my favorite. Well, probably is my favorite rapper actually. So I have
And
to.
he's just
I have to check. He's a great rapper.
he's still coming so strong. Like
Yeah.
it's really worth checking out the album. The flows, he sticks to some of his traditional flows. He's not trying to do trap, but he modernized it a bit. The beats are still killer. Great piece of work. You don't often hear like a whole album that's really good, and he did it. So.
I think one of the worst things that I saw was Ice Cube in a trap thing. That was so bad. Oh my God. But anyways, we'll get that. So guys, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also follow us on social media on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Black in the Maritimes. Peace out.
Bye.
Peace.